Welcome back to this week's episode of Toronto Truth Seekers Fireside Chat with the Aliens. We're here at the Cannabis Expo down at the Metro Convention Center. Mr. Richardson, Bubbleman, inventor of the bubble bags, is about to take this stage and give us a little bit of speech. And bumped into Daniel down here. I was very pleased to see him. Haven't seen him in a number of years. And yeah, we're having a lot of fun. There's a pot convention going on down here. Cops are raiding more dispensaries as we speak. They raided a bunch on Thursday. We're down here on Saturday. And yeah, someone just showed me a text. There's more dispensaries being raided as we speak.
Okay.
Well,
first of all, I want to thank everyone for coming today. I am Marcus Bubbleman Richardson. I'm here with my partner, Tony Verzura from United Cannabis and Blue River Extracts. And I guess we're going to talk to you guys a little bit today about the glandular trichome, a little bit of the science of the glandular trichome. I'm hoping, as I didn't bring a presentation, that you guys know what a glandular trichome looks like. If you don't, pull out your phone, go onto my Instagram account, BC Bubbleman. I have a ton of them on there. I take extremely close-up macro photographs of these glandular trichomes, and in essence, they are the essential oil secreting glands of cannabis that secrete all of the phytocannabinoids as well as the terpene and terpenoid profile that we, of course, know and love, all the smells and the tastes. And so I guess I'll give you a little bit of a history of how Tony and I came together. We share a similar vision in quality and in standards. I've been doing the bubble bags for the last 17 years, teaching people how to extract their resin glands using water and ice to a 99% glandular trichome head ratio. This is the ratio you want to acquire your medicine, as it is the medicine of the plant. People ask me all the time, why don't you smoke the actual plant? And I say, well, the actual plant is like a carrier, and it carries fiber, it carries cellulose, it carries essential oil secreting glands, it produces seed oil that is extremely rich in essential amino acids, and it produces all these things generally from the whole. If we want to make paper, we take the cellulose. If we want to make fiber, we take clothing, we take the fiber. If we want to use medicine, of course, we take the glandular trichome head. And so it was really in my passion for following the glandular trichome head, teaching people how to isolate it, that I met Tony, who's doing very similar things to me, but in a very different way. Tony was responsible for founding River Rock in Colorado with his partner. He's no longer a part of that, but he was a big part of it. And he created some really incredible things during that time. The Act Now program, which is the activated cannabinoid therapy program that he does with his Prana line, teaching people to microdose cannabinoids suspended in terpenes in extremely small milligram doses, and really teaching people how to saturate the endocannabinoid system rather than guessing with an actual visual map or landscape that is created by empirical data, people feeding the data about their sickness, about the strains. Information going back and forth into this program created this digital landscape for specific cannabinoid potencies and levels, activated and non-activated, to create what he's created, which is the Prana. So it was very much an attraction for Tony and I to come together. One of the things Tony started doing in the last year, which really was a path he's been on for several years, but really sort of exploded in the Hash Church forum. I don't know if any of you watch Hash Church. Would like to see your hands if you're a Hash Church fan. Hash Church is a live YouTube show that we stream weekly. We get 1,000 live viewers watching, maybe 15 to 20,000 in the first week. And it's really a forum of radical openness where we share our ideas and we discuss things about cannabis in a way that is very open and allows people to learn and be a part of it. It's an open source sort of a program, and that's really how Tony and I got brought together. Tony also represents my brand, the Bubbleman brand, down in California at Harborside, and maybe you want to give us a little lowdown on how that's going down there.
Yeah, I was just wanted to say thank you for having me. The last time I was here, I think it was 2 years ago. Much different type of conference. This other one was more of a business conference, so I'm really glad to see the industry progress as far as it has gotten. I understand that everyone's still going through the 3 tiers, LP, dispensaries, and individuals, all having different types of constitutional rights, if you will, here, and you're finding your way. So I know it's also a hard struggle when you're doing that. I've started with this plant since 1996 and have been treated like a criminal since. My background is I started when I was in a couple car accidents in 96. They prescribed the wonderful oxycodone to me, and I dropped about 150 pounds. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, constantly constipated, and I started to smoke cannabis. I started to use it in edibles, and was able to get myself off of opiates. And since 96, I have no longer used anything, not even a Tylenol, for my condition. I was also in, thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah.
For those out there using cannabis in substitute of opiates, it's 100% possible. There's quite a bit of an illusion that goes on. I don't not subscribe to using cocktails or pharmaceutical grade cocktails when you're going through a surgery, back surgery, a knee surgery, brain surgery, heart surgery. Probably don't want to smoke a joint before you go to one of those surgeries. So there is a place in the world for pharmaceutical types of cocktails or drugs that they can use in those small, short window terms. But in the long term use, it's something that's going to break down our body and ultimately cause a lot of side effects and a lot of other conditions and organ failures, all kinds of things that will happen to us. So in the long run, we have to search out for something that's alternative, something that's homeopathic, something that we could turn to first, exhaust all of those things. So diets, foods, things that we put into our body, anything that you feel in the essential oil-based world, I feel that we as society should exhaust those first, try the natural path, and then explore the other ones. If you're dealing with cancer, you're dealing with life-threatening diseases and things like that and ailments, obviously I'm not going to be the one that says to use cannabis as an alternative for cancer, but we have about 3,000 patients on our current program. We use a blended version of ratios that are suspended in fatty acids and lipids, and with the terpenes, with the plant fats, with these cannabinoids in raw form and active form, we're able to do them in controlled dosages from 1 milligram to 50 milligrams in 3 different delivery systems. And we have plenty of patients that are in remission. I just put up a story before I came here of a leukemia cancer patient that didn't have any chance whatsoever. The doctor said, look, we're experimenting at this point. You're going to die. The kids brought in our products. In 3 weeks, they released the patient. He's still in remission today from November. This happens quite a bit with cannabis, and it's these bioassays and these observational data that we can't ignore. And so for 4 years, I developed an EHR, electronic health record software, a platform that's free to patients. It's supported through nurses and doctors and scientists. One of those scientists actually was from Calgary, discovered stem cells in 1988, and is one of our lead scientists. And what we wanted to do was provide products that were 100% plant-based, that utilized all of the terpene profiles, these cannabinoid profiles, and delivered it in a very pharmaceutical base, but taking, as you say, the farm out of pharmaceutical and putting the farm back in.
Yeah, taking the harm. Pharmaceutical is spelled P-H-A-R-M. If we take the harm out of pharmaceutical and we spell the word F-A-R-M, we can put the farm back in pharmaceuticals.
Yeah. So that's really key. And so, both of our nations are going through those growing pains. We've got 28 experiments going on, as I call them. Colorado, California, Oregon, Seattle, and the media and the news and the politics, they are very crafty in the way that they can finesse the different messages that are out there. And the message is still the same. We're still dealing with prohibition, and we're still being treated like criminals instead of patients.
And not only that, I just want to interrupt for a second, Tony, that it hijacks the actual medicinal component of the plant when you don't understand it. The people that are putting these these laws into play, they don't understand where the actual medicinal components of the plant actually are. So they're looking at it much the way a prohibition-based grower would have looked at it back in the day, which is how much can I get and how fast can I get it. And these aren't really conducive thought patterns to a medical program, or even really a preventative, or in my opinion, even a good rec program. It's just not the vibe for us to be coming from.
Yeah, and when we talk about standards, my background's engineering, so I like to break things down in systems, and I also like to relate them to the end use. So as a patient, I've also been growing since '96. I stopped growing 6 years ago because all of my friends grow, and they grow very well. I subscribe to sun-grown, live soils, tea brews, everything that you can possibly make organic, because it kind of defeats the purpose of using this product in a chemical format. I'm not against hydrocarbons or CO2 or things like that, but this is where Marcus and I, our bond has really came together. Was I was first a patient, I discovered cannabis worked for me, and then many years later, the United States said, hey, I think we have an opportunity for people to do this legally in a medical platform. So I became obsessed with how do I make enough medicine to help other people like me, and I came across photographs of these trichomes. And so if you're obsessed with your medicine, you want to see the details if you're an engineer. And so I started seeing these pictures of these trichome heads, and I was like, oh my God, there it is. It's like a grape, but it's blown up. You couldn't see them because they were so small. And I'm like, who is this guy? And there's like these unbelievable photographs that I could never do. You can't do it with your phone, you can't do it with your camera. And I'm into photography, so I'm like, exploring this. And then one day I got a 2000 zoom microscope, and we cut a trichome head in half. And we looked at it. And that trichome head actually had a brain. And it looked like a whole bunch of vessels inside it, like the human brain.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
A lot of you guys came to hear a little bit of science of the glandular trichome and cannabis, so we know that all of the cannabinoids are biosynthesized inside the glandular trichome head, as well as the terpenes and the terpenoids. There are 6 varieties of trichomes. I won't go through them all right now, but the 3 most popular ones are the bulbous, which are little round balls that lay on the leaves. They're high in a different level of cannabinoids than just THC, and they happen to be the glandular head that is responsible for oil yields being so much higher than, say, water extraction or dry sifting mechanical separation. And the reason is because these heads are so small, they're attached to the leaf. They don't break the same way. They don't isolate the same way when using mechanical separations or when using water extraction, which obviously freezes the wax membrane and breaks the head. The density of the trichome is still affected by gravity due to its density and its oil makeup, so it sinks while everything else floats. So inside this glandular trichome head, we have organelles, basically vacuoles and plastids. They're 2 little chambers inside the head, and they create phenols and terpenes. And those phenols and terpenes, one in the plastids, one in the vacuoles, they're all different types of organelles. They push up into the upper membrane, and that's what you would have seen when you cut that trichome in half. That fibrous mat is where the phenols and the terpenes are pushed up into the upper cuticle of the glandular trichome head, and it's through UVB light that the cannabinoids are actually cooked into existence, first with CBG, and then it goes from CBG on through a variety of cannabinoids. CBN is not produced by the cannabis plant. It's a biodegradable cannabinoid. When it goes down and it starts falling apart and degrading, it turns into CBN, but CBN is not actually a cannabinoid that you will see in a living plant by testing. So just thought I'd lay a little bit of the science on them. Maybe we could talk a little bit about those terpenes in there.
Let's talk about how those are evolved. So prohibition-based growing methods. I've done it. We've all done it. We grow using metal highlights or high-pressure sodium. I like I've started and did 3 parts hydro system. I did a drip system, deep water culture system. I've done aeroponics.
How about aquaponics?
Aquaponics.
You get it right. After aero, I hope.
After aero. And then ultimately at the end of the day, it comes back to soil. I know it's everyone tries to find ways to get away from the sun and away from soil. But I always tell everyone that's so you're raw, you're vegan, you eat everything organic, farm to table. So how many of those things were actually grown indoors? all your vegetables, all the things that you're eating and that you're putting into your body. Are you throwing them in your closet? Are you growing your micronutrients under just a shop light? I mean, because then wouldn't that limit the ability for that fruit or those herbs or those vegetables to really mature into what it's supposed to do, which is really code. It's code for what we put into our body. So when we put these things into our body, we either have an interference pattern, meaning fats, inflammations, sugars, glucose, whites, breads, rice, all of these different things that we put into our body, we're all different, we all process them differently. And so if we don't grow those herbs or those vegetables or those nutrients to true value, and we try to put them into our body, we're cheating ourselves.
Yeah.
So if we all ate an orange together and we peeled open the orange and we didn't smell anything and it didn't taste like an orange, chances are it doesn't have limonene, and chances are there's no vitamin C in it. So what are we doing? We're eating a 3D printed fucking orange.
And you know why we're
with
doing
carbohydrates and sugars. What the hell is that shit?
The reason we're doing it is because we were duped by Prohibition. We thought, okay, Prohibition is bad, but we're going to do it anyway. And what we did was we fell into this mentality where we would see how much we could get and how fast we could get it, and we limited the cannabinoids and the terpenes that were being produced in these plants. And I guarantee you, when we get back to landrace cultivars and we start breeding the landrace strains back into our platform here, we're going to see cannabinoids that we haven't seen in decades, and we're going to see terpenes that we haven't seen. There's 140 plus terpenes in the cannabis plant that can be produced, plus about another 40 that have never been identified. So that's close to 200. Most labs test for 12 to 24 terpenes, and that's because only about 12 of them repeat over and over and over again. And I can guarantee you that has so much to do with the way we've grown cannabis indoor under this Prohibition mentality.
Yeah, so if you look at that, and I have nothing against indoor growing operations whatsoever. There's plenty of them that are good, but we have to look at what's being grown, leaf or resin. So that's great if you grow 3 pounds of plant, but what was your resin content? That means...
Hey, right away, if someone tells me they grew 3 pounds of plant, I know they're growing for plant, because anyone that was growing for resin would tell me they got 2.5 ounces of resin, not 3 pounds of plant.
Correct.
Are you growing for resin, the medicinal compound on your plant, or are you growing for, to pay your mortgage and to pay your car payments, which is, unfortunately, it's the situation we find ourselves in right now with, I'm an activist. I come from an activist standpoint. I fought for hemp to be legalized and grown legally in my province in Manitoba. We got our first hemp license in 1995 and have never stopped growing it there. I've been deeply involved in this industry, and I think it's unfortunate to see the way the legal mechanisms and the illegal mechanisms are unable to somehow meld together and work together. It's Health Canada in the middle convincing dispensaries to hate LPs and LPs to hate dispensaries, and we really, really, really need to stop doing that, because the only way to conquer a people is to divide them. And we do not need to be divided. LPs and dispensaries are doing the same great job. They're giving access to patients, and that's something we need. So I just wanted to kind of say that, a little outside of the science version.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It all comes together, right?
Absolutely.
So when you look at, we've grown, in my experience, I would say 500 pounds a month for the last, I don't know, I did that for like 6 years. 300 lights indoors, 20,000 square foot in greenhouses, and now as it's evolving, I'm getting more away from that and just focusing on processing resin into products, because that's really where my passion is. But really, when I look at it and I pull back and I say, okay, what's really the best form for this plant for growing the medicine and the terpenes? It's sun-grown, greenhouse, all organic, with supplemental lighting. That is the future of cannabis, whether you like it or not. And the reason why is because ultimately, when you find something that works and we produce a medicine for people, we have to get it insured, we have to do it on such a massive level, and we have to standardize it, and we need to do it organically. And so those things come together, and that's really what the key is. And so the best price per pound for your resin is going to be in a controlled greenhouse environment, however that may look. And the reason why I subscribe to that is because I'm looking at terpene profiles. So our booth was set up today with we had over, I think, 20. I've done over 51 different terpene profiles. Today we had like 12 of them available. I think we're down to 4. But what this was is capturing those essential oils and the terpenes from those trichome heads and doing them from flowers without any solvents. It's kind of like if you took like a grape and you had to figure out how to pop the grape and take the inside out without any THC, and you just wanted to take the essence.
And without leaving a footprint, which is very, very difficult. It's where the intellectual property comes into play. You should really sort of point out the difference between the indoor-grown terpenes versus those sun-grown greenhouse terpenes.
Yeah, so what I've just in my experience is running let's say you run terpene extractions on flowers grown sun-grown, terpene extractions grown indoors, big wide range. So everything I've grown in sun-grown, AC/DC, a Cavello sour diesel, you start pulling these profiles from the outdoor strains, we see 10, 12, 13 of the terpenes that are in the grid pattern of the DNA, if you will.
You can come by the booth and check these out if you want to see them.
Got them all printed for you.
627.
So you'll see like 10, 12, 13, 11. You'll see wide spectrums, full spectrums of terpenes. You'll see eucalyptol, you'll see limonene, you'll see linalool, you'll see pinene, you'll see different types of pinenes, and each type of cultivar, each type of strain leaves a DNA in these terpenes. And so we now have been testing the flower rosin, the flower next to the hash. So you look at full melt, then we press out the full melt. So we're able to look at the full melt and those terpene profiles, the rosin and those terpene profiles, and the terpenes of the original flowers next to the flowers.
So you can compare.
So you can kind of track all the way down. And when you do that, you discover that when you're growing indoor, and you have to look at what your lights are, and you have to look at what you're feeding. So if you're growing in gavitas or pappies, or you're growing under HPLC, high pressure sodium, if you're growing under these different spectrums are going to allow that plant to express differently.
Exactly. A perfect example of this is if you understand lavender, the herb. Where is the best lavender grown? People that don't even know about lavender will often see it on the package, French lavender. There's a region in France where lavender grows this incredible terpene profile. It happens to do with how high they are away from up from the ocean. You know, it's all altitude and the soil, and it's all of these variables. And it's a very important thing to note. And before Tony gets back to the terpenes, I just want to explain to you guys, in case some of you really are more of coming from a noob standpoint, like a newbie in all of this, is that phytocannabinoids help regulate our endocannabinoid system, which helps regulate our biological functions. We have CB1 and CB2 receptors in our brain and peripheral organs, and depending on the deficiency that our endocannabinoid system may use, we can use a variety of these cannabinoids in different ratios, which is, one more time to reiterate, and I don't own shares in this company. The part that I'm involved with United Cannabis is we are partners in Jamaica together, but other than that, everything he does in America is his own thing, and it's not guessing. They are not guessing about ratios and seeing, oh, try this, try this. They are creating a digital landscape with the Act Now program, and that is unbelievable. It's not a guess. It's more like much more accurate because it's based on actual evidence from people that suffer from the same sickness. And I just kind of wanted to let people know a little bit about that and realize, why are we extracting these terpenes? Because about 12 years ago, one of my mentors, Skunkman Sam, he acquired some pure cannabinoids, CBG, CBD, CBN, and pure THCA from a laboratory in Amsterdam. And we went over to his place, and he was like, hey, you got to try this out. You can hit this pure THCA in a pipe, and I hit it, and it was very one-dimensional, very heavy set, heavy in my eyes, not really what I would call an enjoyable social experience. But then he said, hey, I also have these pure terpenes. They're not derived from cannabis, but they are pure analytical terpenes, and there's D-limonene, and there's terpenoline, and there's pinene. He had 4 or 5 different ones, and he said, why don't you now try that THCA, but take 1 drop of this terpene, and this revelatory experience occurred that we realized that the modulating effects from cannabis come more from the terpene profiles than the actual ratios of phytocannabinoids. So while everyone's trying to sell you CBD and different ratios of CBD and THC, we were more focused on what directs those compounds, because I understand those compounds are the gas. They make you go. But the terpenes are your steering wheel, and they direct that. And when you can induce an appetite or a different medicinal component out of a plant that otherwise didn't give you that by modulating it with terpenes, that is some next level shit. Go ahead.
Yeah, see if I could tie that together to what he was talking about, because a lot of people probably don't know what Act Now is. So we'll get to that. But first, how we're breaking down these terpenes was first looking at them in full spectrum in their cultivars, comparing them and how they're being made. And I just saw a lot of differences between sun-grown, sun-assisted versus, say, indoor, one-dimensional type of light. Instead of seeing 10 and 12 terpene profiles, you might say 3 or 4, or you might see 5 only. And it would be concentrated on that. And so this is a really unexplored territory, but what it's led us to is saying, okay, from what we know, which has also changed in the last 3 years, most people look at cannabis sativa, cannabis indica, and hemp. And so the vernacular of that isn't really true. So it's Afghanica and indica drug type varieties, and cannabis sativa is a hemp variety. And this has been something that's been changed as of the last few years. Robert Clark and different individuals have expressed their input on this. And this is important because drug cultivars, meaning things that produce resinous trichomes, is what we're talking about that carries the terpenes. And hemp varieties lack the sophistication of these terpene profiles. And so it's a part of their survival. So they're producing male and female, they're cross-pollinating, and their intentions are not driven in the same secretions in the oils, and they definitely don't have the full profiles of those terpenes. And so that also lack of sophistication, in my opinion, in what I've seen so far in the data, is lacking in indoor. Indoor does a great job raising THC levels, and you see spikes of different types of cannabinoids, CBG, THCV, and spikes of CBD when you're outside, even CBG-A. And so all of these types of cannabinoids are being produced on these types of varieties, and the terpenes that are involved in them have to do with the genetics. And so the breeders that are out there, and good breeders that know what they're doing, they're going to be breeding for terpene profiles, and they're going to be breeding for resinous profiles.
Exactly.
So what's happened is our world has gone from smoking to concentrates or extracts that then go into medicine. And those people that are making the extracts are going to tell you what happened. And so when somebody says, hey, I grew this sour diesel outside, and you run it and you get an 8% yield on flowers, you go, oh, what happened? And they go, what do you mean what happened? I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. Did you have a drought at week 5 to week 7? Did something happen with your phosphorus cut out towards the end, right? Or you overfed, or you had this. And I start breaking down what happened to their crop from the footprint of the terpene profile, or from the footprint of the resin that we extracted in bubble hash. So it doesn't lie. And so those yields tell me what's going on. And you collect that data. And ultimately, you need to know how to translate the data. And so for what you call newbies and patients that are trying to find their way, hunting down strains and now hunting down terpene profiles complicates the process even more when you're looking for results. And so my engineer brain decided to say, okay, let's create categories. Yeah. 5 simple categories, which is P1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And in those categories, we categorize them really simply put. P1 is going to be all of your, what everyone knows as cannabis sativa, but that would be your Jackson, your Durban poisons, your sour Ds, things with high limonene, things with high
terpenoline,
yeah. Beta caryophyllene.
The names are going to be the categories only. In the future, patients need to know, and it was Chimera who mentioned this on Hash Church, that the constituents of the plant, what make up the plant or the resin, is going to be what the name is. If you're a patient, you want to know what terpenes you're getting. You want to know the ratio of of cannabinoids. I don't care if you call it Jack Flash. I want to know what terpenes and what cannabinoids are in the end product, and that's definitely going to be the future of cannabis. Names will always be there, but the true name, in my opinion, is going to be the constituents that make up what you're using medicinally.
And why are cannabis-derived terpenes important? Well, if we know there's 140-something of these terpenes, and we know there's an extra 30 out there that are unknown, and lavender is one-dimensional, so that flower produces one type of terpene really well. And cannabis being one of those first plants on earth that things evolved from, different species like hops and things like that, they have vast, complex terpene profiles. So this is undiscovered.
Chosen by us. It's our noses that chose those terpenes over thousands of years. It was this olfactory that smelled the ones we liked. It wasn't the plant looking a certain way that made us like it. I guarantee you, if you go back 1,000 years, it was our noses. It was the terpene profiles.
And some of those terpene profiles act as insect repellents. Some of those terpenes act as nutrients. Some of those terpene profiles have different
They can act as a solvent.
They can act as solvents, but what's important is to know where they belong as far as classification. So beta-caryophyllene, we know, turns on CB2 receptor. That's really important because that's really the gas for that particular receptor. And so if we know we're putting 10 milligrams of CBD or 10 milligrams of THC and we're modulating with a particular profile that has high beta caryophyllene, then we know we're going to press that. Then what is it carrying with us? So does it have myrcene? Does it have pinene? And then how much cannabinoids does it have? Then we go a step further and we say, okay, that's great. So you're saying I can eat terpenes and I can eat this bud and that's gonna solve my problems? Absolutely not.
Necessarily, but it's going to turn on, especially if you have that beta caryophyllene, you're going to turn on that CB2 receptor. And when we talk about these receptors, some of the receptors are in our brain, in our central nervous system, and some of them in our peripheral organs. So if you've got a liver cancer and you're turning on your CB1 receptors, that not might be the ideal way for you to go about saturating your endocannabinoid system, because the CB2 receptors are the ones you're going to need to engage to get those cannabinoids to communicate with those cells, to produce apoptosis, to kill the mitochondria of those cancerous cells. Cristina Sanchez from the University of Madrid, if you want to write that name down, she's done some absolutely incredible work in regards to apoptosis and THC.
Yeah, so absolutely. There's individuals on this planet that have inspired myself, and like Marcus, you've got Sanchez, you've got Dr. Marzo, that's international cannabinoid research out of Italy. Mashula, all of these people have been identifying these receptors. Now what we know is we've got like 4 of them on the board, but there's thousands of them. And with cannabis, we've got this large spectrum of terpenes that are being pinged. And so we want to know what they do and how they act. We know what they do in foods. Vitamin A is a terpene. We know what that does to our body. And so we're discovering these things in cannabis, and what's important is, in the beginning, is put them into grids. And so what Marcus is talking about, this evolved into what I call advanced cannabinoid therapies. So if you wanted to look it up, it's actnowprogram.com, and it's a free service for patients in the U.S. And since they didn't do any insurance, I just said, fuck it. I hate to use that kind of language, but at some point you get over it. And
when it's a fuck it, it's a fuck it.
It's a fuck it. Because at some point you have to say, how do we help people and how do we follow up with them? So I created a program that's HIPAA compliant, EHR software that has nurses running it, that tracks patients' results, and you get free consulting, and we learn how, and we teach you how to use these different categories, P1 through P5, with different type of ratios, with different types of full spectrum flower and resin derived products. They're infused, not extracted.
Active and non-active.
In raw form and in active form. And some people would be like, why would you give me the raw form of THC-A and CBD-A together? Well, most doctors and scientists, they think that it has to be activated. So our edibles, RSO, all of these types of oils that we're putting into our body in its activated form is what they're thinking is actually pinging the CB2 receptor. So what happens when you eat an edible, a 10 milligram edible, it's a long chain, and the way that works is it gets broken down in your small intestine, large, and goes through the liver. And so if we're eating it, or if we're eating raw THC oil, or we're eating edibles, we have about a 95% loss in bioavailability. So there's 5% bioavailability. So if I'm eating a 10 milligram edible, it feels like 0.5 milligram. And so on our website that we put on there, we have not only the services and the programs on there, we have links to scholarly articles and publications, because many patients are always looking for proof and evidence in pancreatic cancer, breast cancer, ID1 gene, proliferation of THC. So I put all of the reports that I could find out there, the entourage effect, how terpenes work with those things.
You know, the only thing I wanted to add is Tony's saying a lot of stuff that some of you may understand and some may not. When he says activated, we're merely talking about removing a carboxylic acid ring from the THC-A molecule or the CBD-A molecule. All cannabinoids come in acid form, so they are THC-A, CBD-A, CBG-A. It's a carboxylic acid ring that can be removed with a certain amount of heat. Applied. So that's what he means by activated. THC-A is obviously non-activated, but there's still medicinal benefits, and THC minus the carboxylic acid ring is activated, and you're going to feel the effects when you eat it, when you put it on your skin.
Smoke a joint, as soon as you light the lighter, you're activating it.
That's it. The fire activates it.
Most people didn't understand that. Courtney was Christy. No. The guy that does the juicing. William Courtney, Dr. William Courtney.
Great guy.
He was an inspiration for me a while ago. You look at someone juicing leaves, right? And juicing THC buds to get the THCA.
Yeah.
So
William Courtney, just to tell you a quick little bit before Tony gets into it, is he had a 3.5-month-old baby patient who was suffering with a brain tumor the size of a small potato in her head. It was splitting the left and right hemispheres of her brain, and the chemotherapy was for sure going to kill her. And so they started juicing cannabis and giving her cannabis, and I guess it was
cannabis.
It was a couple of months, 2 or 3 months, and they shrunk the tumor so far out of existence that they decided that an MRI would be unnecessary radiation for her. So she's in remission and has no tumor.
Itself.
Now, it is amazing, and I want to say, you know, the reason we don't hear doctors saying this is because every doctor will tell you, I cannot say that. They will lose their license if they say that, but the fact of the matter is we as a people cannot ignore this information, and Tony and I won't lose shit if we tell you that it can shrink tumors.
That's right.
So we will.
So then I said, okay, well, everyone's a little different. And the patient story that we did, this guy was in a VA hospital, military, completely against cannabis. His kids snuck in non-active, 50 milligram 3-to-1.
This is a leukemia patient?
Yep,
Yeah.
This recent one, and activated 1-to-1. And, you know, snuck that into the hospital. 3 weeks later, I was explaining, went into remission. I didn't really want to film the story, so I waited from November until last week to film it, just to make sure, because, you know, when somebody walks in extremely ecstatic and happy, and like, it's shocking for us as well. And so we want to make sure that we have the right information. This has happened many times, hundreds of times, but you can't ignore this. And
No.
so what happens is you have to figure out how do you create a use for that. And so suspending it into infusing it and suspending it into fatty acids and lipids allows for bioavailability increased to 300 and 400%. Utilizing cannabis terpenes, whether you're using them in your rosin or your hash or extracts and you're smoking them or digesting them or using them in sublinguals, increases bioavailability just like it does in oranges and every kind of fruit and vegetable and things that we put into our body. And so I feel like the next wave in the future of real medicine, especially here, is, you know, figuring out how to, you know, educate the public first on that. So you've got breeders and you have farmers, and, you know, the wave of just breeding CBD genetics, it's kind of like ready for the next chapter. We need to breed CBD genetics, drug cultivars that express specific profiles of terpenes so that we can maximize the bioavailability in the medicine that we're making. So if the government decides to restrict you to 30 milligrams per capsule, then you say, man, if I was just eating a 30 milligram edible chocolate bar, I've lost 95% of that medicine. But if I'm eating a 30 milligram capsule, like what we're creating, then you're getting an increase in that bioavailability. So we actually only use 10, 20 milligram capsules, and 50 milligram capsules is our max. I personally don't eat the 50 milligram active capsules because it feels like 350 milligrams, and I don't do well with edibles. So that's why I was very keen on microdosing. And after talking to our scientists and different doctors, when you look at sublinguals and you say, okay, I can give you 400 dosages in the power of your fingertips at 1 milligram dosages. You look at cannabinoid pharmacokinetics that's done overseas in Europe, so you realize that when somebody eats it or somebody smokes it or they use a sublingual, you can see the bioavailabilities, but you could also see how well it absorbs. So crossing into the glandular underneath your tongue, doctors can subscribe to that. They understand that. They're like, okay, I'm giving 1 milligram dosing. I'm administering it as a sublingual, and I can work this way up. A new cannabis patient, instead of jumping into a 500 milligram magical brownie that's going to take them onto a trip for 2 days and probably they'll never use cannabis again, we start with 1 milligram with 1 unit. So if somebody says, I have pain, and that's all you have? You just have pain? You have neuropathy or pain? You don't have trouble sleeping? No. You don't have IBS? No. You don't have tumors? No. You just have pain? Well, that tells us category 1, THCA. If you're brand new to cannabis and you're sensitive, we go raw. And so by suspending this into plant fat, we're able to get the raw cannabinoids into the body, just like with the juicing that you were talking about.
And building up a proper saturation. If someone needs a massive dose, it's best to build up to that. To give someone a gram of resin in one shot, that's, especially if you're eating it, there's something that happens in the liver when we consume cannabis. It goes into our stomach and then it metabolizes in our liver, and THC in particular metabolizes into a metabolite called 11-hydroxy metabolite, and it is extremely powerful. For anyone that thinks they've graduated from edibles because they've smoked a joint, they quickly learned that they did not graduate from edibles once they ate that brownie, and they were like, wow, this is a real serious thing. So that's another thing that could be very uncomfortable for patients, and it's why it's one of the things I'm really stoked about the Prana and the Act Now, is that it's this microdosing, 1 milligram drops under the tongue. You know how much that is? Most edibles are 35 or 50 or 100 milligrams. Some are 250, some are 500. I've seen 1,000 milligram edibles. Those will knock you out. Those are not really what I would give to grandma.
Yeah, and they're just, it's taxing on the body, you know. So these are things that we're coming and you're advancing. And so the possibilities are really unlimited in the sense of how you can combine things. So there's other studies out there combining black tea with fatty acids, lipids, cannabinoids, terpenes. That increases bioavailability. So just think about like how superfoods, or if you look at alkaline chart of foods and you say, okay, kale, Himalayan salt, cayenne pepper, all of these things that are considered superfoods are very high on the alkaline, and things that are generally bad for us are very low and acidic. And so when you're dealing with cancer and things like that, we want to...
Lots of theories say cancer can't survive in a high alkaline diet.
And all of the patients that we work with, as well as myself, as I try to recommend that, is say, okay, let's strengthen our body and our mind and our health to be as good as it can. And you look at foods and it works the same way. And so when we look at the future of that, it's saying, okay, we've got this wide spectrum of terpenes, we've got this organic resin, we've got these categories, and we're putting them into suspended fats and delivery methods. And then the next chapter to that is how do we incorporate into the mainstream, into other medicinal foods? Because that's really what cannabinoids are. They're medicinal foods.
Yeah, they're actually essential. They are essential. If you understand that essential amino acids are the building blocks of endocannabinoids, the cannabinoids that we produce endogenously in our body, that is why they're called essential amino acids, because we need endocannabinoids to survive. It regulates our endocannabinoid system, and in turn that system regulates both our immune system and our central nervous system. It puts them into homeostasis. And so it's a very important thing for people to learn. We don't have much more time to talk. I really wanted to end it on letting you guys know to not be afraid to share this information with anyone that you know, whether it's for a preventative aspect, a recreational, someone that's stressed out and needs to relax, someone that needs it for medicinal purposes. Don't be afraid, like doctors are, to share this information, because it's the right thing to do. And there's nothing more important to a terminal patient than hope. And if you can give hope to a terminal patient, you've done a great job. Thanks everyone for listening. I really appreciate it.
Okay. You make some questions?
Yeah, we could hit maybe a few questions, but I want to make sure we leave the time. It's 3:50. You wanted 10 minutes? 2 questions we'll take. So if you want to...
Brain trauma. Okay, so that's a good one. Real quick. So difference between CBD. Yeah, so we created one called P5. So that's all, that's activated CBD with AC/DC terpenes. And so that terpene profile modulating CBD. And so that's when people think of CBD, think of anti-inflammatory, think of improving cognitive function. It's really good for brain trauma. If you wanted to pair that in a non-active, you would do like a 3-to-1 CBDA to THCA. That'll be the best for repairing cognitive function and post-brain trauma. So sleep problems, that's our P4. So in large dosages, we use CBD and CBN. So that combination of CBD and CBN is really good for inducing sleep. Why? Because when THC is degraded into CBN, that breaks down into a byproduct like Marcus was talking about. That's the ocular feeling. If some of you that are as old as I am have ever smoked what was called regs or swag, maybe the worst you ever had in Canada was BC Bud, but in the United States, we had Mexican swag, and that stuff made my eyes go like this.
Paraquat.
And it put me into couch lock. That's the that is THC converting into CBN in a long-term process on the plant after it's dead. And when you smoke it, it's very like sedative.
So what you could do for yourself, like if you weren't able to buy these products, is you could take a coconut oil, you could crock pot it, you could take a heavy indica, something that people are like, oh, this is really like heavy. You could make a nice extract with it and eat a tablespoon or less right before bed, and you'd sleep like an absolute baby. You don't actually have to smoke it. And mostly for preventative, and the consumption of cannabinoids orally, to me, is one of the most important ways we can take them in. Now, if you have ocular pressure, nothing's going to beat smoking 1 puff of a joint to reduce ocular pressure instantly, and that can avoid blindness. So I would never say to the people that say, we're going to move away from the medical aspect with smoke. It's never going to happen. There's always going to be people with MS, Parkinson's, glaucoma that can relieve ocular pressure and relieve tremors instantly after 1 or 2 puffs. So,
and a real quick tip. So those that smoke bongs, if you collected your reclaim, or you were able to get keef, or you were able to get your cooking hash, if you just threw it in an oven, 250 degrees, and you did it for a long period of time, like 9 days, long periods of time. You never hear me say this on Hash Church or anywhere, but you can take your keef and you can convert it to CBN. And so I've done full conversions of keef into CBN with like 250 to 270 degrees. If you did it quickly, like and you were trying to cook it on a pan, on the stove, it would go from being light brown, then it would go to like a chocolate coffee ground kind of color, and it would get really dark. You could do that with a coconut oil. Now you have CBN. And then if you went and got CBD, right, if you could get access to CBD, then you could combine the two, and that would be really good for using that for sleep.
you guys can check us out at booth number 627, Bubbleman brand in Blue River, and please check us out on Hash Church Live every Sunday at 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. West Coast time. Thank you, everyone.
That was very interesting, wasn't it, Dad? Terpenes. Terpenes. Oh, here you go.
This is the start right here.
Cool, like education.
Yeah, it's hard because we've come from the legal aspect. You know, I was a criminal 25 years ago. Well, of course, I was involved in cannabis and I didn't care. I practiced civil disobedience. If someone was sick, I would get them cannabis. If someone wanted to use it recreationally, I would get them cannabis. I believe in it. You know, it's number one on the Chinese pharmacopoeia. It's 4,000 years old. Ma is number one.
Thank you so much.
It's very nice to meet you.
Thank you.
This is Sarah Diesel right here. Push cleaner. Long Valley OG. Log cleaner. Cherry AK-47. Swiss Tsunami. And these are the actual.
Swiss Tsunami is the one left? Or is there any other?
Yeah. We've got Swiss Tsunami, Cherry K47.